If not, I'd like to turn it over to Phil Edholm for the quick tip of this evening. Phil, welcome.
Thanks, Jim. So we're going to continue with the discussion we did last week, which is a little bit and this is a discussion. I'm finding this is less of a clinic and more of a discussion because it turns out these are tools that a number of us use. The goal here was to make them open and addressable to the folks that are not using them today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just kind of talking about where we were. We talked a little bit about how to sketch things. We decided we talked about doing two different objects. The first one we talked about doing was this crossing sign. And what we did was we kind of identified the height on it, and then we were able to identify the crossing, and we actually showed how to put this together. So if you print this, you now can actually print it out. And then you'll have your crossing sign. You can glue those back to back if you need to see it from both sides. If it's only going to be viewed from the front side, you only need the one side. This was the second object we had. And so what I'm going to like to do tonight is basically kind of talk about how would we replicate this, and instead of making it the Missouri Pacific lines, let's make it the Central Pacific lines. But we want to use this logo to create a logo. So what we've done is I've actually copied this logo. I found this on the internet. We'll talk about that next week, about how to find these things. I found this on the internet, and what we want to do is figure out how can we use the tool set we have to replicate this logo. So, remember we come up here and we click and we get this tool set. And if you kind of look through the tool set, what you'll notice if you go all the way down here with stars and banners, that they actually have a star. Now, the stars they have are basically 16 and 32. They're kind of 8 doubling size stars. The Missouri Pacific lines is actually 42. But the reality is I don't think many people would see the difference in our logo that we're trying to use as a master for. So we decided we were going to go with 32. So we'll go ahead and we'll put here, holding down the shift key, and we now get basically a starburst. One thing you'll notice is that starburst is at a different angle than the starburst over here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to move this starburst over here, and we're going to actually go down like this. And we just made it the same size as those back there, because what that's going to let us do, and I hit the shift key here when I move it side to side, if I hit the shift key, it keeps it from moving up and down. It's even though I'm moving my mouse up and down, it stays on the line. So that lets me line it up there. And you'll notice that if you kind of look around, you notice there's this yellow dot here, and this yellow dot allows you to adjust the angle of those. So, if we want to get in really close, we can zoom in here on our slide, and we're going to move this up a little bit as we go here. And we can now look up here and say, okay, let's get this exactly right so it matches the angle of the one that was already there. So it's a little deeper because they're a little smaller, but now we've created something that's essentially the same size. So now what we need to do is we need to figure out how to color this. And this is a tool I'm going to show you. And unfortunately, because I'm doing this on my second monitor, the way this works, it doesn't work well on the second monitor. So I'm going to have to go over and do it on the first monitor, and then I'll show you, but you can try it. This is called a color contrast analyzer. If you just search for that on the internet, and after I get done, I'll find a link and send it to you. It's actually developed in the UK. It's designed for contrast for color blindness. So you can put the background and the foreground text of your website in it. It'll tell you whether or not someone who's got relative color blindness can read what you've got. But what it's really good for is you can grab one of these tools here, and you can come out and you can find colors. Now, the problem, for some reason, this is just not finding it over here. So I'm going to go over here on my other screen where I can find it. And what I did was I just took this tool, just like this one here, and I went over and I clicked, and you'll notice right here, it was just gray. So it's giving the 240, 240. What I did was I clicked that tool on this color right in here. And you'll notice that what it did was it gave me an RGB color 124, 24, 26. So if we go over here and we now go into the shape fill, we can pick shape paint colors, and we can enter 128. I don't know, what was it, 2044 and 26? I'll have to go back and look. I didn't remember now, and I forgot, of course. Let's bring this guy back up here. 24 and 26. So this is 24 here. So now if we hit OK, we've replicated that color. So just understand how we did that. Let me go through it one more time because I went pretty quick. Is you go to shape fill. You can do the same thing for the outline if you want to. We'll see how we do that in a moment. What you do is you go to shape fill, you go to more fill colors. There you can choose either some standard colors. And by the way, if you want to, you can make this bigger so you can actually see it better, or you can choose custom colors. And there's this color chart that you're actually working off of, but down here you can actually enter the RGB rating. So we now have essentially what looks like kind of that inside there on our Missouri Pacific. Maybe I think I'd like it just a little bit up more. Just my eye says that should be up. So now the next thing we need to do is we need to create the white background. And I'm going to make the assumption here that we're just going to go ahead and have the red be the edge of this versus having a separate white on the outside. Because typically when you go to print these things, trying to do something on the outside of the white, you're going to cut off anyway. So let's, again, take a circle tool, and we now make a circle. So that circle now, we're going to center on this. So to make this a little easier, I'm going to move this off to the side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these over and I'm going to center them. And you notice they kind of locked in on this centering at the 0 line, because what that's going to do is that's going to let me move this one over there. And I'm going to lock it on the center line. And then I'm going to go up to the center line. And I got to move it up a couple of clicks. And so now it's centered. So what I can do is I can pull it out and make it bigger. Now, when I do that, it uncentered it actually a little bit. So I have to do it on both sides, then I'll recenter it. And remember, it's now in front. I want to see that red icon behind. So to do that, I go to Arrange and I send it to the back. Remember, arranging, I'm sending it to the back. So now I've got that in the back. Now I want to change the color. So the shape fill, I want to make it white. And the shape outline, I want to use that same red. And you'll notice here where it says recent colors, where you got all these colors up here, but the recent color is that one I selected. So that's the red. So I can select the red. And now what I can do is I can select the weight of that line. Well, obviously that's not enough weight. So what I need to do is I need to open that toolbar over there. Remember that toolbar over there where we said format shape? Now we can go look at the line, format shape, right click, take off the drop-down menu, format shape. Format shape will appear over here. Or you can do it by doing shape format up here and using the tools up here. Once you have this, now we can make that line 12 points. That look about right? Looks about right for what we wanted. Maybe a little bit, we want it a little bit smaller than it is. So one of the things we can do is we can actually do that over here by going to size. We want to lock the aspect ratio because we want to keep it a circle. Let's drop the size down here a little bit. Let's stripe it down to 6.8 and let's see what it looks like. Now, of course, once we do that, we've got to recenter it. So we come over here, we grab it and we recenter it. And it just kind of centered itself. And you know, that doesn't look too bad. Now what we've got to do is we've got to go inside and we've got to create a white line inside. So since we have this here, we're just going to copy it. Control C, Control V, that copies it. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to change this a little bit. And then what we want to do is we want no fill and we want a white outline. And now that line can become our inner line. You see how easy that was to put that inner line there, and it actually matches, the thickness matches between the two lines because we used the same line. So now the last thing we have to do is just put the text in there. So let's choose our text. Let's say we want to do the Central Pacific, Pacific lines. I missed a carriage return there. Sorry about that. Now, the first thing about our Central Pacific lines is we want to center it. So remember up here were these tools for text right here. We're on the home page. Tools for text are right here. Clicking, we can center it. Want to make it a little bit bigger. And now this is where it gets interesting because you want to actually go pick some text that looks like that text over there. So we'll bring it over here. If we go up to the text, you notice that there's some things here that have colors. This one looks like a marker. This looks like a text. So maybe that's the one that would make the text white. And then if we make it bold, and let's make it a little bit bigger. So now what we need to do is we need to find a font that we feel comfortable matches this font over here. And the way you do that is you highlight this whole box, not the text. If you highlight the text, you'll only change the text. If you highlight the box around the text, it does all the text. And then we come up here and we start looking for fonts. And the beauty of Windows is they give you all these fonts. Now, one of the fonts I kind of like is Bond Script is nice, kind of a railroady. I kind of like Barlow here. So this one here looks pretty good to me in some ways. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that I actually did this so that you can't see the Missouri Pacific there, and that's actually not very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually move these two over. Select all that. We're going to move them over a little bit so that we can see better what we're doing when we do that drop down. So again, we come back over here, highlight the text, pick the drop down, and now we're going to pick what text we want to use. So we talked maybe the Barlow, that might be a good one. The Bond Script, but it looks a little thin. So you basically look through here till you find a font that you're comfortable with for what you're doing matches. You'll notice most of these have the capability of putting the font in there, and there are so many fonts, you can almost always find something that matches the font that you have in place. I think maybe let's look even at Arial for this one. This is Arial. We can do an Arial. We can do an Arial dark and Arial black, or we can do just a basic Arial that's bold. So now, if we do whatever text, whatever color you finish, now you'll notice we now have the Central Pacific signs. Now, the weathering and stuff I would do afterwards, but you can do the rest of it ahead of time. Now you just take this, and if you copy it, you can now go to another slide as easy, and you can paste this, paste special, paste it as a PNG object. And now this is just a scalable object that you can use anywhere or ship to anyone, and it can be printed and done on anything. So from the standpoint of putting your object together for your railroad, that basically, creates the object you would need to be able to have a logo. So anyway, that was kind of covering tonight a little bit about how you use some of the tools to create something like a logo. Any questions, comments, enhancements? I'm sure there's some suggestions. Go for it.
Bill,
Go, John.
is there an actual align tool inside PowerPoint?
Things align automatically, and you
They
get
do,
dotted
okay.
lines when they align. So there's an alignment tool. But the nice thing is if you're doing anything circular, you can align to the center of the slide, and they'll drop a line to the center of the slide.
All right, so it'll okay, it'll snap to the center.
It snaps to the center reasonably well. It's not aggressive. You kind of got to search for it a little bit sometimes, but yeah.
It's great.
Bill, I'd want to mention to people, if they're really trying to match a font for some type of sign they're making or something, if they can't find the font that is actually in the Windows drop-down menu, you just look online for
That's true.
fonts, and you'll find many samples and sites that have free fonts available, and they're very easy to install on the Windows platform once you download it.
And I think the other thing to always remember is, and I was going to bring it and show it, and I'll try to bring it next week. I'm doing a sign for Western Union, and I couldn't find exactly the right font. I kind of narrowed it and played with it. And after I printed it out, you'd be so hard pressed to see it. I mean, you'd have to be practically climbing into the middle of the model to see the difference in font size. And I think you can be a bit pedantic when you're looking at something on the screen and it's a foot wide, when you're going to print it, it's going to be a quarter of an inch wide. And so,
Exactly.
you know,
And
I
especially
think
once
there's a
you
little bit-
weather it.
Exactly. There's a little bit of, you know, it's good enough for, you know, it's good enough for the distance work we do in modeling. John, I think John had a question. You were raising your hand there. You got to unmute. There, you're unmuted, John. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it said the host would unmute me. So that this is my first meeting. I finally got logged in. I modeled the Indian Creek Railroad. It's my own little freelance, and I took the speed stripes from Missouri Pacific because I like NS. I also do NS, and I took off the bird. Let me see. Let me show you. And I thought this would be a great thing to do for making some decals for my other stuff. Like here, see Indian Creek. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. And I thought, man, that'd be neat to be able to print your own, you know, like your decals, right? Or whatever, fonts or whatever.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Yep. No, and and in fact, that's, you know, that's one of the things is that you can, you know, with these tools, take something like that, duplicate it, and then print your own decals out. And we'll talk next week. We're going to talk a little bit about doing photo prints, which are great for signs. And then the next week we'll talk a little bit of decals. And by the way, you know, one of the things, everybody, if you have a suggestion or hint, speak up. You know, this is not an area. This is not one of those areas anybody's super expert on. I think we all know a little bit about a lot of different things and have figured out our own ways. So cool. I'll throw it back to you, Jim. Thanks.